You know how your parents probably told you about the moment they first saw color TV. How it felt like magic. Suddenly the world inside that box wasn't just shades of gray anymore. It was alive. Well, there's a generation right now trying to explain something similar to you. Except this time, it's not about a better screen. It's about no screen at all. Or maybe it's about every screen at once. It's complicated, and honestly, that's kind of the point. The Metaverse? You've probably heard the word thrown around, maybe seen Mark Zuckerberg looking slightly unsettling in a virtual reality headset, talking about the future with the enthusiasm of someone who's just discovered a new dimension. And if you're sitting there thinking it sounds like science fiction nonsense, like someone took The Matrix, sprinkled in some video game dust, and called it the next big thing, well, you're not entirely wrong. But you're not entirely right either. Here's the thing about explaining the metaverse. It's like trying to describe the internet to someone in 1985. Back then, if you told someone that one day they'd carry a device in their pocket that could instantly connect them to nearly all of human knowledge, let them see their grandkids' faces from across the world, and also somehow convince them to argue with strangers about politics at 2 in the morning, they'd think you were describing a fever dream. But here we are. The metaverse is that same kind of leap, except this time, it's not just about connecting information. It's about connecting existence itself. Imagine waking up in the morning. In the world you know, you get out of bed, maybe make coffee, get dressed, go about your day in the physical space around you. In the metaverse, you could wake up and step into a completely different reality without ever leaving your living room. You put on a headset, not the clunky, ridiculous-looking things from decades past, but something sleeker, more comfortable, and suddenly you're standing on a beach in Bali. Except it's not really Bali, and you're not really there. But your brain doesn't quite know the difference. You can feel the warmth of the virtual sun, hear the waves, see other people walking around. Some of them are your real friends, logging in from their homes in different cities, different countries. Others are strangers, exploring this same digital paradise. You can talk to them, interact, build sandcastles together if you want, and none of it requires a plane ticket. That's the promise, anyway. The metaverse is supposed to be a persistent, shared, three-dimensional virtual space where digital life happens alongside or instead of physical life. It's not just one thing. It's an interconnected web of virtual worlds, experiences, and economies. Think of it as the internet evolved, grown up, become immersive. Instead of looking at web pages on a screen, you'd be inside them, moving through them like they're actual places. Now, if this sounds overwhelming, that's because it is. For a generation that grew up with tangible physical experiences, where meeting someone meant actually being in the same room where shopping meant walking into a store and touching the merchandise, where entertainment meant gathering around one TV set because that's all you had, the idea of voluntarily choosing to live part of your life in a computer-generated fantasy world probably seems insane. Why would anyone want that? What's wrong with reality? And that's where we get to the uncomfortable part. The part that explains why so many young people are desperately excited about this idea. For them, reality hasn't exactly been delivering on its promises. They've grown up watching the economy crumble and rebuild and crumble again. Watching housing prices soar beyond reach. Watching the climate change in real time. Watching social mobility become more myth than reality. They've been told to work hard, go to college, get a good job, and everything will work out, only to find themselves drowning in student debt, working gig economy. Jobs with no benefits, living with roommates well into their 30s because a house is a fantasy reserved for lottery winners and trust fund kids. The world feels increasingly like a game rigged against them, and they didn't even get to see the rulebook. So when someone comes along and says, "Hey, what if there was another world, a digital one, where the rules are different? Where you could own property, build a career, create an identity, and maybe even thrive?" Well, suddenly that doesn't sound crazy. It sounds like hope. In the metaverse, a kid who can barely afford rent could theoretically own a mansion. An artist struggling to sell paintings in the physical world could create and sell digital art to thousands of collectors. Someone who feels invisible in their daily life could become a respected community leader, a successful entrepreneur, a celebrated performer. The barriers to entry are different. You don't need inherited wealth or connections. You need creativity, time, and a willingness to dive into something that doesn't quite exist yet in any complete form. But here's where it gets even more complex. The metaverse isn't just about escapism or economic opportunity. It's about identity. In your generation, who you were was largely determined by where you were born, what your family did, what your community expected. You had a role, and you played it with varying degrees of satisfaction. In the metaverse, identity becomes fluid, customizable, experimental. You could be anyone, look like anything, present yourself to the world exactly as you wish to be seen. For people who've spent their entire lives feeling like they do, unquite fit in the physical world, whether because of appearance, disability, social anxiety, or just a deep sense of not belonging, this represents a kind of liberation that's hard to overstate. Think about someone with severe social anxiety who struggles to make eye contact, whose hands shake when meeting new people, who spends every social interaction replaying their mistakes afterward. In the metaverse, those physical manifestations of anxiety don't exist. They can interact through an avatar, practice social skills in lower-stakes environments, build confidence without the weight of their physical presence complicating everything. Is that avoiding the problem? Maybe. Or maybe it's creating a bridge to eventually solving it. The technology involves virtual reality headsets that track your movements, sometimes your eye movements, even your facial expressions, translating them into your digital avatar in real time. It involves haptic feedback technology that lets you feel virtual objects through vibrations and pressure. It involves spatial audio that makes sound come from specific directions, making virtual spaces feel more real. It involves blockchain technology for creating and owning digital assets. Though if blockchain sounds like gibberish to you, just think of it as a way to prove you own something digital the same way a deed proves you own a house. Companies are pouring billions into this because they see it as the next platform, the successor to smartphones and social media. They're building virtual offices where remote workers can meet, virtual stores where you can browse and buy products, virtual concert halls where musicians can perform for millions simultaneously, virtual classrooms where education becomes experiential rather than just lectures and textbooks. The applications are endless, and the potential for profit is astronomical. But there's a darker current running underneath all this optimism. Because if the physical world feels like it's failing young people, and they increasingly retreat into digital ones, who benefits? The same corporations that have monetized every other aspect of modern life are salivating at the chance to monetize your virtual existence too. Imagine needing to buy virtual clothes for your avatar, virtual furniture for your virtual home, virtual tickets to virtual events. Imagine advertisements following you through virtual spaces the same way they track you across the internet now. Imagine the richest virtual landowners being the same wealthy corporations and individuals who dominate the physical world. The promise of the metaverse is democracy, meritocracy, a fresh start. The reality might be the same hierarchies and inequalities, just with better graphics. And for the young men most drawn to this vision, the ones who feel left behind, who scroll through social media seeing everyone else seemingly succeeding while they stagnate, who lie awake at night wondering if this is all there is, the metaverse represents both hope and risk. Hope that they can build something meaningful in a space that feels more fair. Risk that they're just trading one form of alienation for another. There's also the question of what we lose. Human beings evolved to exist in physical space, to feel sunlight on skin, to touch other humans, to move our bodies, to experience the raw, messy, unpredictable nature of reality. If we start spending significant portions of our lives in virtual spaces, what happens to those fundamental aspects of being human? What happens to our bodies when we're sitting motionless for hours, eyes fixed on screens? What happens to our communities when physical proximity matters less? What happens to our minds when we can curate every aspect of our experience, filtering out discomfort and challenge? These aren't hypothetical questions. They're already happening with social media and smartphone addiction. The metaverse just takes it further, makes it more immersive, harder to distinguish from reality. And for a generation already struggling with loneliness, depression, and a sense of meaninglessness, that's either the solution or the final nail in the coffin, depending on how it's built and how it's used. So when you ask what the metaverse is, the simple answer is, it's a collection of interconnected virtual worlds where people can live, work, play, and interact in immersive three-dimensional environments. But the real answer is much more complicated. It's a reflection of our current moment where physical reality feels increasingly inadequate for meeting human needs, where technology promises solutions to problems it often created, where young people are desperately seeking belonging and purpose and are willing to find it anywhere, even in spaces that don't technically exist. It's both incredibly exciting and deeply concerning. Full of potential for creativity and connection, but also for exploitation and escapism. It's the next chapter in humanity's complicated relationship with technology, and nobody knows how it ends. We're all just along for the ride, some more willingly than others.